In the 20th century, the industry became increasingly capital intensive, and a gradual transformation in which global competition and a global commodity pricing environment that was very competitive.
As machines went on to replace human jobs, many plantation workers decided to pursue and discover other forms of labor.
The war effort in the 1940s employed people and gave them skills that they would never have acquired. For example, even if you were only a cane worker, you could suddenly become a machinist at Pearl Harbor Shipyard. This combined with early statehood made the economy explode. During this time, Oahu was seeing an increase in the number of people moving for job opportunities. This led to a need for more houses and services as Honolulu transformed into the financial and commercial hub.
Castle & Cooke acquired controlling interest in 1962, a period of rapid economic development and rapid urbanization already in the mid-1960s. So they were already thinking about conversion of agricultural plantation lands to suburban residences and the communities that have come along. First Mililani up on the saddle, and then coming down the slope on A&B land and on AmFac land.
When Castle & Cooke took over operations, Ewa Sugar Plantation consolidated with Oahu Sugar Plantation, so the operations at Ewa Mill were discontinued. This changed the community as many people lost their jobs at the mill.
And this community, which is a mix of plantation homes that would have been built by Mr. Dillingham and by the plantation itself, housing was provided to the workers on the plantation. Of course, the general manager's house, so the Rentons would have lived here for 40 years, hence Renton Road.
Then there was a period of dormancy where there would be suburban developments happening in Ewa Plains, mainly by the Gentry companies and Jim Schuler. And it was quite interesting because they weren't interested in making expensive houses, but focused on making affordable housing for everyday regular people. In 1970 to 1980, maybe for about 20 years, the community twisted in the wind. Since the residential development was happening in other areas and everyone moved to town where the action was, we wouldn't have had many businesses or community institutions like schools and churches feeding on the same population like before.
This is typical of these sorts of transitions where, for a while the old stuff nobody wants. And then after 20 years, everybody realizes, wow, you could buy that old shack for really cheap, and B, you could trick this house out and make it an awesome house, right? And what happens then, you come back into a community like this where there's this history and where the houses have nice spaces between them and a yard, and all of a sudden, a community like this has a charm and an appeal that brings the capital back in, brings people willing to invest back in the community. So more or less that process of redevelopment, revitalization of the community, in many cases involving residents who had hung on and just kind of stayed.
And so we look at the Ewa we have today. It's way different from what it looked like before. Everything has been redesigned to give the community a more modern aesthetic look, a look that brought people in.
Instead of sugar plantations, we have malls and restaurants and even golf courses. Instead of cane workers, we have people working at businesses such as McDonald's and Safeway.
Over time, the community has drastically changed. As we compare the old communities to the new communities, it's a whole new generation. The community continues to grow and grow, and who knows how much the community will change over the upcoming years.